We have to investigate how we will relate to Russia. What you can do now, don't wait with doing that until tomorrow, because tomorrow there will be other problems. Internet voting is a possibility. It is doable, and yes, it will be enormously difficult. Nobody will blame Ukraine if not everything will be perfect. Everybody will blame Ukraine if you do not organize elections.
President, thank you for agreeing to meet us here in Reykjavik. And first of all, let me ask you a question about future. Now we will prepare a mechanism that will a kind of fix all damages that are made by Russia. It is about to be done. But what's next?
What's next, I think, that is on the summit's agenda. How to protect and promote and defend democracy, not only in Ukraine, but in the 46 member states of the Council of Europe. The challenges are big. Democracy in Ukraine is under pressure because your neighbor is invading your country and tries to destroy your country, and therewith its democracy. But also in other member states, we see a backsliding of democracy. It is absolutely needed that we do not take democracy for granted, but we have to maintain it day by day by allowing our voters to participate in democracy, especially allowing the youth, and by taking care that politicians are to be held accountable. So that is the future for Ukraine and for the other 45 member states.
Let's focus on Ukraine's future in these terms. Indeed, Ukraine is facing not only an unstable for aggression, but also we are facing huge challenges in terms of democracy. Do you expect Ukraine to hold free and fair elections?
Yes, and it has to hold free and fair elections, because that is one obligation under the statute and under our conventions. And it will do so. Of course, there are problems, because as long as you have martial law, your constitution does not allow to have elections. So you have to find a solution. That is not up to us to say how to do it. But of course, Ukraine has to organize free and fair elections.
But let's imagine the war ends up with Ukraine's victory. How can we organize elections in a destroyed or partly destroyed country when a lot of people has fled Ukraine? Do you expect that it is possible?
It will be an enormous challenge. But look to another country, Turkey, who has been confronted with a devastating earthquake. Nevertheless, it was able to hold elections. Whether they are free and fair, it's up to those who have observed these elections to come up with their judgment, but elections were held. And what you say, the fact that so many million, especially women and children, had to leave your country, to give them a fair participation in elections will be an enormous challenge. But I cannot make the message easier for Ukraine than it is. To win the war, to overcome this invasion is already an enormous thing, than to restore and strengthen and rebuild Ukrainian society along the lines of democracy, rule of law and human rights. It's a challenge for years and years to come. But you have to meet the challenge, because if you don't do it, then the question comes on the table: what did we defend in this war of aggression that Russia has called against us? So yes, it is doable. And yes, it will be enormously difficult. But Ukraine has shown that it's able to deal with the most difficult issues.
Of course, the decision on the scheme of elections and so on is up to Ukraine. But let me ask you a bit more specific question. As you said correctly, many Ukrainian women has fled, and well, it would be difficult for them to return. Now in Ukraine, some people discuss that maybe we can vote via internet. Discussing that approaches in Ukraine is possible, and this can help. Or we should better stick to ordinary elections that are proved to be resistant.
As said, this is up to Ukraine, the Ukrainian authorities and Ukrainian political parties to decide. But again, referring to the Turkish elections, in many European countries, Turkish citizens were allowed to vote. The same goes, I think, for a country as Moldova. So voting outside the country is doable. It needs a lot of organization, but there you could use the best practices of the Council of Europe. Internet voting is a possibility. Of course, it's much disputed, but in the end, it will be your authorities and your politicians who have to decide in which way we can make the elections as free and as fair as possible. Nobody will blame Ukraine if not everything will be perfect. Everybody will blame Ukraine if you do not organize elections, because democracy is more than elections, but without elections, democracy cannot function. So this is a tremendous job for your country, but I think it's doable.
You said correctly that nobody would blame Ukraine, and that's understandable in terms of war, and we see that nobody is criticizing us. But do you notice that irregularity, maybe a case of Goncharenko not allowed to participate in PACE meetings?
Yes, but I do not consider that as a consequence of the war of aggression. Each parliament has to abide its obligations in the Council of Europe, and that means if you send your delegates to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, they should be fully able to do their job. It's not a cafeteria, the Council of Europe, where you allow members once in a while to do something and at other moments you do not allow that. I am aware of the problems that our member Goncharenko is meeting now in Ukraine. I hope that it will be solved in a diligent way. I wrote a letter to the Speaker of your Parliament, and if you send people to Strasbourg, then they have to do their work, whether they are a member of the opposition, the coalition, whether they are independent or related to the government. I think that is a problem not very big, and it should be solved by the Ukrainian authorities as soon as possible.
When do you expect Council of Europe and you personally to raise those irregularities more vocal? Because it's not the only. We have problems with TV channels that are, let's say, banned from digital broadcasting.
Yes, I'm following it closely as the President of the Assembly. Freedom of speech, freedom of media is very important. And of course, in conditions of war, things become different. But there are the fundamental obligations. And again, as your President said, we are not defending borders, we are defending values, we are defending citizens.
But and when can we expect that this will be more vocal?
I think that I hope to go to Ukraine on short notice, and I want to discuss with the Parliament, because as you said, a country under attack of a brutal aggression, it's not so easy to really do everything perfect, but there is something between perfect and not doing it really correctly. And I think that Council of Europe could assist your Parliament in improving behavior, even in times of war.
So would you wait with indicating that problems before the end of war, or you would press on Ukraine to fix something even now?
No. My humble proposal would be, what you can do now, don't wait with doing that until tomorrow, because tomorrow there will be other problems and more problems and more problems. It is huge what we ask from Ukraine. Defend yourself against a foreign invader who uses brutal aggression to destroy your state. And at the same time, we say, but realize, as your president said, we are defending our society. So you have to protect the society as well.
One day, when the war will end up with Ukrainian victory, the topic of possible Russian, let's say, new joining of the organization would appear. How do you see a way to not allow to happen what we have witnessed, not to enclose the country which not want to adhere to European values?
Yeah. It is now made completely clear by its war of aggression that Russia, it's not a democracy, it's a totalitarian regime that threatens its neighbors and even invades its neighbors. If the war is over, we have to investigate how we will relate to Russia, because Russia is there. It is the biggest country on earth. It's the biggest European state with millions and millions of citizens who also deserve to be protected by the rules that the Council of Europe has. But there cannot be justice without accountability. So Russia first has to withdraw from Ukraine. Then it has to admit that it overstepped its obligations. That means that it has to restore the damage done. It also means that it has to show credibility for the future, because just stopping with the war, waiting for a next possibility to restart the war, that's not a sustainable solution. So it is tremendously important that in Russia itself, things are going to develop as well. This regime that has started this war of aggression is not a credible regime for the future. It is up, of course, to the citizens of Russia to take decisions on that. But only then I see a chance that Russia returns to international law. This is an enormous, difficult process, but let me recall that after the Second World War, we had the Nuremberg trials, and Europe managed in not too much time to develop a fascist country, as Germany, Nazi Germany was, into one of the leading democracies of Europe. With regard to Russia, it's probably even more difficult to have that development, because Russia never was a democracy.
Tribunal is possible or isn't. For Ukraine, it is important to have accountability. Yeah. So can we be sure that it would be a necessary step?
I think that in all the statements of our Parliamentary Assembly, but I think also tomorrow and the day after tomorrow in the statement of the heads of state and government, that we need to restore justice, and that needs accountability. There will be a reference made in the statement of our heads of state and government to these elements of the Zelensky peace plan. Yes, justice has to be restored. It needs accountability. Therefore, it will be in the statement of the heads of state and government that we need an ad hoc tribunal to deal with the crime of aggression, that we need a compensation mechanism to restore the damage done, and for that we need to register. And the good news is that tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, I think tens of European and other countries will adhere to this new partial agreement to install this register of damage that will be organized in the Netherlands, in The Hague. That is a great step forward. No justice without accountability.
Thank you very much for that interview, and thank you for supporting Ukraine in these hard times.
My pleasure.